Hey, welcome to Film Fanatics. This is our best and worst of 2014 show. My name is Dan.
My name is Justin.
And I'm Joe.
This year, we're doing it a little bit different as opposed to just adding it into one of our regular shows. We have devoted an entire episode now to the best and worst of the year, and we've thrown a couple of other extras into the fold, including a challenge to each of us. Each one of us challenged the other two members of the show to watch a movie that we felt they graded a little bit too harshly during the year. So we all rewatched them and are going to give our secondary thoughts on them. But first, we're going to start with another new item to the best and worst of the year list, and that is the top 5 most disappointing movies of the year. These maybe are not ones that made our bottom 10, but that we thought could have and should have been better. Joe, let's start with you and hear your top 5 most disappointing.
All right, well, I'm going to go from obviously the least amount of hype to the most disappointment, essentially.
Sure.
So, number 5 isn't really that big of a deal. It's Godzilla. Number 4 is Maleficent. Number 3 is Tammy. Number 2 is The Judge. And,
yeah, that was bad.
And number 1 for me was A Walk Among the Tombstones.
Okay. Well, for me, you had Get On Up at number 5. Really thought that would be good.
Mm-hmm.
Sex Tape. For me, the worst comedy of the year, and I liked a lot of the people involved, so that was kind of sad. Number 3, Horrible Bosses 2, on my top 5 most anticipated for the year. I thought the trailer looked funny.
Thought about that one,
just
too.
Didn't work out. My number 2 is Annie. I know I graded it the highest of the group here, but I was expecting like A range for this movie. I really, really was looking forward to it, and in that B minus C plus range, just really doesn't cut it. And my number 1 was Jersey Boys.
Oh, yeah.
Another one that was on my top 5 most anticipated that just really faltered. Justin, how about for you?
Well, number 5 is The Box Trolls. Leica has done some great stuff. Coraline, Paranorman. This was just a really underwhelming follow-up and surprisingly mean-spirited from them. I was really thrown off on this one. Number 4 is Maleficent. Hey, let's take a dark new spin on a Disney story and cram in this very strange, very poorly written idea.
Agreed.
Number 3 is Annie. There was so much going for this. I was all for this new kind of street change. I like the casting choices, but this just royally missed the mark. Number 2 is Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. Just a complete slap in the face to fans. It still looks great, but the magic's gone. And my number 1, The Monuments Men. This should have easily been up for Best Picture. I don't know how George Clooney managed to screw it up, and I'm still asking that question.
All right, so possibly not appearing in our bottom 10s, but ones that we just were not feeling this year. Next up, we're going to shift into some of our favorites of the year, and we're going to sort of, we're doing a top 30 this year instead of a top 20 like we did last year, just to sort of give a little extra love out there. So 30 through 21, we're just going to kind of list off, and then starting once we get into the top 20, we'll delve a little bit more into that. Justin, let's start with you this time for your first 20 of your top 30.
Number 30 is Borgman. Number 29, Edge of Tomorrow. Number 28 is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Number 27 is Nightcrawler. Number 26 is Dom Hemingway. Number 25 is Cavalry. 24 is Top 5. 23 is Lone Survivor. 22 is I Am Divine. 21 is The Theory of Everything. And 20 is one that we haven't reviewed on the show, but that is Jodorowsky's Dune. Just a really fascinating documentary about this project that never quite made it off the ground, and it's really a shame because it looked fantastic. 19 is A Letter to Momo. Just a really, really well-told anime story that is basically a love letter to Hayao Miyazaki, but does it so well in an age where so many people try and very few succeed. Number 18 is Guardians of the Galaxy. Really fun new look for Phase 2. Honestly, the best of the bunch for this current phase. I'm not entirely sure if Avengers Age of Ultron is going to follow it up well, but more power to them. Number 17 is Afternoon of a Faun. Just a really engrossing documentary about a really interesting subject. sort of tackling the same sort of themes as Black Swan in terms of perfection in ballet and how it can sometimes completely destroy a person in the end result. Number 16 is Only Lovers Left Alive. Really, really interesting story. I think Tom Hiddleston gives his all for every character that he portrays, and this is no exception to the rule. His chemistry with Tilda Swinton is awesome, and Jim Jarmusch always gives you something to talk about. And number 15 is Snowpiercer. Really awesome dystopian story. Chris Evans, probably one of his more challenging roles, and some beautiful, beautiful imagery. Number 14 is X-Men Days of Future Past. Takes everything that we've known and feared about the latest X-Men saga and just finds a way to give us a fresh new start without compromising anything that we've already seen. Everybody seems right on board, and it's an absolute thrill ride. Number 13 is The Rocket. Very well done character study, great concept, really cool documentary feel, but just a really interesting under the radar look at family life in a foreign country that most people aren't familiar with. Number 12 is The Missing Picture, an absolutely brilliant documentary, living proof that people are always coming up with new and inspiring ways to tell a really, really dark story, but this absolutely pulls it off. And number 11 is The Lego Movie. Dan's usually the one to say I'm a hard critic of kids' movies, but this was such a breath of fresh air. Animation is unique and gorgeous. Chris Pratt is hilarious, so is Will Arnett. It just has a great message for kids, and I'm hoping that they can keep it up.
All right. Joe, let's go to you next for 30 through 11.
All right, my number 30 is Mr. Nobody. Number 29 is Borgman. Number 28 is I Am Divine. 27 is Skeleton Twins. 26, Joe. 25, Letter to Momo. 24, The Double. 23, Frank. 22, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. 21, Dom Hemingway. My number 20 is The Raid 2. I actually was a little bit underwhelmed by the reputation of the first film, and I actually thought that the action was a lot better in the second one, and I was really into the story. Number 19 is Nightcrawler. I think that it was just a really dark commentary on the media, and I think Gyllenhaal does a really good job portraying this complicated character. Omar, just a good character study, I think, with some really relevant topics. Number 17 was The Drop. Really great performance from Hardy, and a great last one from Gandolfini, and a pretty good crime thriller, I think. Number 16 is Edge of Tomorrow, or as it's known now, Live, Die, Repeat. Just a really unique action/fan sci-fi film with one of the best Tom Cruise performances I've seen in a while. Number 15 is Captain America Winter Soldier. I was a little hard on this one before, but it really is a very well-done movie, and it's one of the better ones of the Phase 2, honestly. Number 14 is The Lego Movie. As Justin said, just a really great family fun film with a lot of great animation and some cool ideas, and it's actually very mature and went a very, very unique and bold direction for a kid's film. Number 13 is Better Living Through Chemistry. I really loved this movie. I thought Sam Rockwell did a great job. I thought it was a really good dark comedy. Really enjoyed it. Upon reflection, my number 12 is actually Fury. I actually think this one was really a really well done war movie. I bumped it up a little bit. I was really into it. Solid story. Number 11 is Locke. I mean, really fantastic Tom Hardy performance. Upon reflection, it is a really solid movie, and I think it's just more proof of what he has to offer.
And since you did mention Fury, yeah, I mean, these lists don't necessarily reflect our exact grades for the show because, you know, at the end of the year, you're kind of looking over everything, and some things move up, some things move down. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
And number 21, Afternoon of a Fawn.
All right, well, I will go next. My number 30 is Lone Survivor. 29, Alan Partridge. 28, I Am Divine. 27, Nightcrawler. 26 is Omar. 25, Life of a King. 24, Obvious Child. 23, The Missing Picture. 22, Life Itself. And 21 is Belle. At number 20, it's Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I really am enjoying the way that the new series is going. I do go back and forth on whether this one is better than the first one. I thought James Franco added a lot there, but I thought the story here was really good, so that's my number 20. Number 19 is The Past. This is an Asghar Farhadi movie who was in my top 5 a couple of years ago with A Separation. This was the follow-up. Not quite as good, but still a really, really relatable story with very human characters. Number 18 is X-Men Days of Future Past. Easily one of the best in the series, if not the best. I thought it was a great way to blend the worlds and sort of bring, some of the favorite characters from all facets of the film franchise. Number 17, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I don't think anybody was as surprised with how much I like this movie as I was. Really, really don't like the first one, but I do like the character, as we saw in the Avengers. So I was glad to see him put to, I think, better use here. Loved that Samuel L. Jackson and Scarlett Johansson also got a lot more to do. My number 16 is The Skeleton Twins. A really, really dark drama from 2 comedy pros, and it just really works. And throw in some Luke Wilson as well for some good measure, and you've got a good time. My number 15 is Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow. A really, really good sci-fi movie that I wish got more credit. It did okay at the box office. It just broke 100 million domestically, but it could have easily been a huge blockbuster this summer because everybody, I know that has seen it really, really enjoyed it. My number 14 is 22 Jump Street. For me, this is the big, broad comedy of the year. I thought it had almost as much magic as the first pairing of Tatum and Hill. Number 13 is The Grand Budapest Hotel. I gave this one an A- originally. Here's one I reflected a little bit upon and made an A for the year-end list. I do think that Wes Anderson really has a keen eye. You can tell his movies from a mile away, and for somebody with his style, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Number 12 is The Normal Heart, a fantastic HBO drama about the early days of the AIDS epidemic with some truly standout performances from people like Mark Ruffalo and Julia Roberts. And number 11 is Birdman. Michael Keaton in top form here. I definitely expect at least a nomination, if not for him to take home the statue. It really is a biting satire of the entire entertainment industry, and it's done very, very well, put to a great drum score. All right, so up next we have our challenges. Each of us, like I said at the top of the show, gave one movie to each of the other show members to watch that we thought was graded a little bit low on the first go-around. All right, Joe, let's start with you. Why don't you tell us why you picked the movies you did, and then we'll give our second opinions.
All right, I guess I'll start with you, Dan, first. The movie I chose for you to reflect upon was The Raid 2, because obviously it was a big discrepancy for us. I really loved this movie a lot. I just, my love of martial arts, action, and just crime drama in general. I really love this sort of thing, and I guess you weren't quite as versed in it. I know you really didn't like it, but upon talking about it, you learned a little more about martial arts you didn't know, that I guess didn't make sense to you before. And I really did think that the story had some biting edge to it. I really liked the characters. Maybe a little bit generous for me, but I did genuinely love it, and I wanted you to take another look at it.
Yeah, this was a huge discrepancy for us. Originally on the show, I gave it a D.
I talked you up to a D+.
Which I moved up the next week to a D+, I believe. Brick Mansions also helped in that, because that was just such a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't grade these the same. Mm-hmm. But yeah, for you, that was an A-. Obviously, we heard it in your top 30. But you're absolutely right. I admit I didn't have a good grasp on the martial arts style, I guess. I mean, I've never really seen a martial arts movie except for, I guess, the first Raid.
Wow.
The Jackie Chan movies I've seen are the Karate Kid and the Spy Next Door. So, I mean,
pretty limited, yeah.
Even some of the mainstream martial arts stuff I've sort of missed out on.
True.
So watching it a second time, it is still far too bloody and violent for my taste. I will say that, and not really the kind of movie that I would pull out, just to watch. But it is hard to deny the very skilled choreography here and the really, really talented martial artists. The first Raid I really enjoyed, which didn't contain much of a story. I liked the story on this one better the second time I viewed it.
Okay.
It did sort of gel a little bit more with me.
Okay.
But I will say that the action sequences are still the strongest part
Agreed.
of the film and really the franchise as a whole. So I actually give the raid 2 a B minus.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
Well, that's
okay.
I can live with that.
I still like the first one a lot more. I gave that one a B plus, which held up upon a second viewing of that. But yeah, I really tried to watch this one with a keener eye and understanding about the field.
Okay, wow, that's pretty big. That's cool to hear. I guess going to you, Justin. I went to you last because this is kind of sort of legendary this year.
The running gag.
Bone of contention.
Probably our biggest disagreement on the show. God's Pocket was the one I picked for you, which Dan and I thought was a fairly mediocre crime drama thing. It had a lot of issues. I think we all agreed on that, but I think a lot of the issues seem to bother you a lot more. I believe you gave it a D minus.
That's correct.
It was just about your harshest grade, which I really thought was way too harsh on a movie that I found to be mediocre, honestly. So
At worst.
At worst, I actually, upon reflection, bumped it up a little bit. I do generally like it. I admit it has flaws, but I was kind of curious to see if a second crack would get you to at least bump it up slightly.
Well, God's Pocket's really interesting because after that review, we've had many, many, many different discussions about it. We've talked about it at work, and without any fighting, listeners who listen to that very, very heated discussion.
It's mostly been civil since then.
Yes, it's been remarkably civil, actually. Mm-hmm. And ironically enough, watching the series Breaking Bad before doing this again really made a world of difference in terms of like how do you tell a story about unlikable characters. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it still has massive flaws for me.
Okay,
I'm not going to sugarcoat that.
Okay.
However, it's a story about unlikable characters and an unlikable situation, but are they necessarily bad because of that? Mm-hmm. No, but the story lacks some major characterization. I think at times nobody's really fully fleshed out.
Yeah.
And I don't think the movie ever really brings that into you, and I think the dark comedy certainly doesn't help with that. Mm-hmm. But overall, I mean, the performances definitely are the strongest point. The story starts out relatively well and is really focused. Mm-hmm. I wish it had stayed that way, but
Yeah.
But overall, I definitely can see that it was better than when I originally saw it. I'm bumping it up to a D plus.
I can live with that.
All right.
All right. I'm glad you could at least see the performance.
2 grades better.
Hey, that's fine. We got you out of the weird D minus range, so I'm okay with that. That's closer to where we kind of viewed it.
So for me, Joe, we're actually going to talk about yours a little bit later when we do our Oscar wrap-up in about 2 months. We're going to reflect on some of the movies we have yet to see this year, like Imitation Game, Foxcatcher, etc., that we may add on our top 20 list. The reason being this movie was a very limited theatrical run and is not out on DVD yet, so it's very hard to find. That's Laggies, which I gave a B+, and you gave a D.
Yes.
And Justin was in the same boat with you, but this was our biggest discrepancy.
Okay.
So once we get to actually track down a copy of this, it gets released on DVD in February. So
Okay.
we'll get to hear your views on that later. But for Justin, it was Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. Plenty of choices to pick from here. And I thought about maybe going with something that you gave an F to, that I gave a higher grade to, like As Above, So Below. But then I thought, do I really care that much about that movie? Alexander was a movie that Joe and I both graded in the B range. And Justin, I believe, another D minus?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep. So that was my choice for you.
This is another one that certainly isn't great, at least not in my book. Strangely enough, more people laughed the first time around that I saw this movie than the second time around, where it was almost a completely dead audience. However, I gotta admit, the family dynamic really is the crux of the film, and it does help when sometimes the movie's just being a little too outrageous. I was definitely way too harsh in the potty humor. I'll openly admit about that. But I mean, the family does work well together. I think, unfortunately, I still think Ed Oxenbould is Lord of the Lisp. But overall, definitely a better experience. I giggled a little bit more this time around. I'm also going to give this one a D+.
Okay. More, I think a more acceptable grade for that one for sure. All right. Well, Justin, how about for you?
Joe, for you, I gave you Fading Gigolo. I believe I gave that an A-. It has been bumped down later to a B+. And I believe, if memory serves, you gave that a C+.
Let me see. Yes, you are correct.
Certainly not the biggest film Fanatics discrepancy, but
One you really wanted me to look on again.
And discussed the same week as God's Pocket.
Ironically enough.
Yeah, for me, that was just like I saw those two movies and I kind of viewed them as being about the same range. I think I was a little harder on Fading Gigolo, maybe because I didn't like maybe some of the comedy elements, like the fact they had two romantic love interests there, that one didn't kind of go anywhere. I thought Sharon Stone was a little unnecessary, but I actually did like, upon a second viewing, the subplots of the film. I actually thought they added a little bit more. I did actually like Turturro's character, and I actually liked Alan this time around. I think I was a little hard on him too. It was kind of, when I was experiencing some of his earlier movies, maybe I was bearing a bit of a grudge there. Maybe that was some bias. But upon reflection, I actually think Fading Gigolo is a pretty decent movie. I bump it up to a B.
Okay.
I actually bumped it up to a B as well. I wasn't asked to do it for challenge, but as I looked over the 2014 list, I originally gave it a B minus.
Yeah, like actually, upon watching it, I thought, it was pretty enjoyable. I was thinking it's one of those films that the memory stayed with me. I was like, going back and checking out didn't really bother me at all. It was pretty easy to get through.
There's some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, there were some good ideas there for sure.
It's decent for what it is.
Yeah.
And for Dan, the one of the few discrepancies in which I graded something higher than you.
And by a good margin.
By a remarkably good margin.
Yeah.
I hope 2015 can keep that up. And that is Mr. Nobody, which I believe I gave an A- to, and you gave a C-.
Well, on the second viewing for Mr. Nobody, I have to say it didn't do a whole lot for me differently. Everything that I didn't really like about it the first time was more apparent. My biggest issue with this movie was that it's sort of three movies in one with varying degrees of success. There's a lot of timeline jumping, etc., etc. Leto gives a great performance, as always. And everything ties up pretty nicely at the end, but the ending also sort of negates everything that came before it. So I like the ending, but at the same time, it made me feel like, okay, I don't know why I just sat through that then. And the idea that it never really explains why this Mr. Nobody is the last living man, I don't know why I can't get past that, but that every time I watch it, I'm like, why don't they just, one or two sentences just saying what this guy's doing? But it does have a lot of really big ideas, some of which I like, some of which I find are a little bit passe or have been done a lot of times in other sci-fi movies. I do give the movie a C, so it's a slight improvement, only because of that ending, though. Both times I've watched it, I really was in that like D+, C- territory, and then the ending, I was like, okay, that makes it a little bit more worthwhile.
So slightly more satisfactory.
Slightly more, yeah. But what I find interesting about both of our choices, Justin, Mr. Nobody and Alexander, they're both in the 60% range on Rotten Tomatoes and the 50% range on Metacritic. So obviously these are two pretty divisive films, regardless. They are kind of, love it or loathe it sort of thing. Obviously, Joe, you enjoy Mr. Nobody. We heard it mentioned on your top 30.
Yes, I mean, I can understand some issues, but I really like that.
Yeah.
It's in line with my type of films I tend to enjoy.
So that's, something I think we'll do every year now, the challenge. I think it's cool to reflect on something that, maybe there was a bit of a disagreement about during the show and see if it changes anything. And now let's move into the worst of the year. We each did a bottom 10, and to go 10 through 2. And I'll start with this one. My number 10 for the worst of the year is Pompeii. This is just really a useless movie. The effects are terrible. The story itself is just uncompelling. And even the acting from pretty good performers isn't really all that well done. Number 9 for me is Vampire Academy. It's certainly not the worst of the worst, but it just doesn't serve any sort of purpose. It's not engaging. It's certainly not funny or clever, and it really thinks that it is. Number 8, Legends of Oz, Dorothy's Return. I actually put this so high up on the worst list instead of down at the number 1 or 2 slot because a couple of the songs were okay, but the movie as a whole is just truly awful. Number 7 for me is And So It Goes. This was sort of a walking punchline for the last few months of the year, especially once we saw Diane Keaton singing in Annie Hall, sort of reflected upon her vocal abilities in this terrible, terrible film. And Michael Douglas, Rob Reiner, it should have been better than this. Number 6 for me is The Pyramid, something we reviewed very recently on the show. Just the worst horror movie of the year, which is really saying something. Nobody was making good decisions in this movie. The horror wasn't even there. I mean, if you want a good laugh, possibly you go to this, but it just is not good. Number 5, Sabotage, the original laugh out loud comedy of the year, especially when Arnold Schwarzenegger and his lady friend started making out of completely nowhere. Where did the romance come from in this movie? It's anyone's guess.
Beyond left field, it's like Into Another Game.
Yeah, exactly. They're playing another sport entirely. Number 4 for me is Addicted. I thought maybe this would be a little bit of an improvement of some of the Tyler Perry movies we've gotten lately, and in fact, it's much worse. The characters are all unlikable. They make questionable decisions at best, and at worst, they make life-ruining decisions without a care. And the acting also is pretty horrible here. Number 3 for me is The Legend of Hercules. This is not the one featuring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. That one is okay. This one, The Legend of Hercules, starring Kellen Lutz, is god-awful. It does not serve the story or the character well. Here's another one sort of like Pompeii, where the effects and the CGI are just terrible. And my number 2 is The Identical. I actually forgot completely that this movie existed until I pulled out all of the grades for the year and thought, oh yes, the horrible, horrible Identical. The fake Elvis movie where he was trying to be Elvis's twin brother, but not real Elvis, and Ray Liotta was in it for some reason, and that was terrible, which you never really can say. So just not a good movie. Justin, how about 10 through 2 for you?
So many.
It should be pointed out, you have the most Fs of any of us, so I'm interested to see which Fs made the cut here.
Well, I was saying earlier in the year that I would finish the year with 15.
Well, I know you were up to 17 or 18 at one point. Did you hit 20?
I hit 17.
17, okay.
So 7 were spared, but here are the 10. Ironically enough, Dan, my number 10 and number 9 are yours reversed.
Oh, wow.
Number 10 is Vampire Academy. Dreadful movie. The reason I give this one a bit more mercy than Pompeii is I feel like, at least in the right hands, this could have been like a kind of cool conspiracy story, but it's just a bad movie. And
it is.
And apparently they're trying to crowdfund a sequel, which is completely shameless, and I hope does not get off the ground at all. Number 9 is Pompeii, a ridiculously pitiful excuse of a movie, essentially rips off Gladiator without a care in the world. The special effects are awful, story's mediocre. Number 8 is A Haunted House 2.
I knew that was coming.
I gave the first Haunted House a pass just because there were a couple moments that made me at least snicker, even though it was a terrible movie. This is so much worse. I'm really, really sick and tired of hearing the Wayans brothers complain about how they can't find work and sticking in their movies in some ironic way. It's pitiful. It's lazy. It's just an absolute train wreck of a movie. Number 7 is As Above, So Below. Hands down, the most boring horror movie I've seen all year. It takes an hour to actually get anywhere, and when it does, it almost ends as soon as it starts. It's not well shot, acted. It's a terrible movie. The only reason I put this one on the list and not The Pyramid is The Pyramid is terrible, but at least I had fun watching The Pyramid. My number 6 is Walk of Shame. Elizabeth Banks, what happened? This is sexist, it's racist, it's dumb, it's just a hateful, hateful movie, which is quite like my number 5, which I fortunately was able to spare you guys from viewing because it is terrible in every sense of the word.
Can't wait.
And that would be Raise. I think Zoe Bell's probably one of the most unsung heroes of Hollywood. Does a lot of stunts. Most of us are familiar with her work as Uma Thurman's stunt double in the Kill Bill movies. This was supposed to be like a vehicle for her to get out there and start. It's awful. It's sexist. It's disturbing. It's a complete garbage movie.
Sounds good.
I just could not believe that anyone would sign on for this, and the ending just makes no sense whatsoever. Which is much like my number 4, which is Sabotage. David Ayer, thank goodness he made Fury, because this is terrible in every sense of the word. Arnold Schwarzenegger's weak. The entire cast is awful, and it just gets worse as it goes along. My number 3 is Left Behind. Nicolas Cage continues to prove that he will sign on for just about anything. It's not a well-told story. It's completely offensive at times. It's accidentally hilarious at others, and just makes you wonder who would actually pay to see this movie. I don't care how big of a fan of the books you were. Number 2 is Addicted. You know, after Tyler Perry's Temptation Confessions of a Marriage Counselor, I was wondering, could this be the next worst movie? And for the most part, it kind of is. It's unbelievably stupid. I don't know how we got through this movie, but somehow we did.
All right. Joe, how about your list?
I might see a few familiar faces. Maybe some new ones. My number 10 is Brick Mansions.
Terrible.
The only thing that was good about this movie was the parkour. That's it, and that was nowhere near enough to hold it together. And the whole Paul Walker thing didn't help.
No.
Really sad last movie for him. Number 9 is And So It Goes. Upon thinking about this one, it's just a bad movie. What a waste of time for viewers of older films, for older audiences, or anybody. Just wasted performances here. Number 8 is Vampire Academy. I mean, there were some cheesy things about it that I guess were kind of funny, but nothing about it really works. Is it a parody? Is it trying to be legitimately dramatic? It's just badly done in virtually every way. Number 7 really is Pompeii. This one just sticks with you. Kiefer Sutherland can't even save this movie, and he was trying, really. But, I mean, it's not even the fact that I feel like the actors were trying, but, like, the script is just so horrible. The effects are really bad, and as Justin pointed out, it's shamelessly ripping off Gladiator in virtually every way, just adding in a volcano. It's literally like bad Gladiator with volcano. That's what you get. Number 6 is The Pyramid. It's hilarious. Definitely you can get some value out of it, but if you try to take it as a serious movie, you said it best, Dan, nobody's making any good decisions. It's just terrible. It's ridiculous. It's a waste of time completely. Number 5 is Addicted. So many dumb characters, just so much stupidity uttered in the dialogue. Nothing makes sense, does not adhere to logic. Whew, man, this is bad. Addicted's rough to talk about. Number 4 is Sabotage. I actually was thinking this is an honorable mention for most disappointing. I was kind of looking forward to this one, and man, just one of the worst. It's probably the worst Schwarzenegger movie I've ever seen. I was like,
I believe it.
He was phoning it in, which he never does. He always at least tries to have fun. Any potential for an interesting story here is just lazy. It's dark, it drags, and once again, stuff makes no sense. People can completely hammy with over-the-top performances, and God, it's just ugly to look at. Number 3 is The Angriest Man in Brooklyn. I mean, I know the actors were trying, they were trying to act, but the story is just so mean and just so depressing and just unlikable. You can just feel it throughout the whole film. What a terrible, last movie I've seen from Robin Williams. I mean, at least Night in the Museum was better since then. So, and number 2 is Legends of Oz, Dorothy's Return. I was too easy on this one.
Yeah, we talked you down on this one.
Yeah, like
Thank goodness.
I really thought I kind of liked some of the concepts. Some of the characters were okay. Some of the music was all right, but overall really ugly. Really would have no desire to watch it again. Just pales in comparison to just really great source material. I think the worst offense was just Patrick Stewart as a tugboat. As a throwaway line. How did they get these people into this waste of a movie?
Yeah.
Just terrible.
It's insulting to children.
It is.
That they would think anybody would like this.
It really is what we said. It's a cheap DVD knockoff that somehow got a theatrical release. So it's just about the worst thing you could see in a theater.
Pretty much, yeah. All right, well, Joe, let's stay with you for the positive and go 10 through 2 on your tops of the year.
All right, well, my number 10 is Snowpiercer. I mean, I think this is a really great, unique, dystopian story with Chris Evans, really probably the best performance I've seen him give. I mean, really surprised me that it was even Captain America for a minute there. And he's shown us that before, but here it really shines. It's well shot, well written. It's quite excellent. Number 9 is Gone Girl. I mean, I think a really good adaptation for what I understand. I really like the performances here. from everybody. Even Tyler Perry does a good job. But really, I think Rosamund Pike steals the show, playing a really complex, disturbing character. The ending still bothers me, but it's still an excellent film despite the darkness. Number 8 is X-Men Days of Future Past. I mean, really just undoes everything bad that was going on with the franchise. Sets it in a whole new direction. Loved the direction they took the characters. And I think it's opening doorways for much more in the X-Men franchise. Number 7 is Chef. Just a fun story. It's just a really warm, feel-good movie with a good tale and great soundtrack. Great characters. It's great film. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. More people need to talk about this one. Number 6 is Boyhood. I mean, just really capturing the essence of just childhood, and the fact they filmed it over a span of years is just, from a technical perspective, is monumental. The story is basic, but it still really works. These characters are still human, and you really feel it. Number 5 is Normal Heart. This was a great surprise because I didn't know about it, but Mark Ruffalo's best performance I've ever seen. Just really heartbreaking, real drama, and fairly accurate from what I understand. It's really bold to tell that kind of story. Number 4 is Whiplash. Man, I mean, just you talk about dynamic between two actors here, plus the soundtrack integrated. It's just well shot, well directed, well written. Whiplash is still sticking with me. I want to see this one again. Number 3 is Guardians of the Galaxy. Just, I think, a monument to what superhero films can be. A lot of fun based on virtually nothing. You know, you have your obscure 70s comic turned to what some people are arguing is the best superhero movie ever in some circles. So really, just fantastic fun. If you get behind that sort of thing, it's really a great time. My number 2 is Birdman. Wow, everything I expected and more. Just everybody does a great job. Keaton stands out here, maybe his best performance. Really, just fantastic work. I love the intricate cinematography and editing. The music's fantastic. Characters are well written. Everything's great. Birdman is really up there.
Nice. All right. Well, for me, my top 10 starts with the Lego Movie.
Oh.
This was far and away the best animated feature of the year. There were a few good ones here and there. I liked Peabody, but this really stands out as something fresh, original, hilarious, great characters that we already know, like Batman, and just puts it in this whole new perspective. Number 9 for me is Snowpiercer. I really, really like this one. Tilda Swinton does such a great job here, and she's not even the best part. It's really Chris Evans' show, and he completely separates himself from anything he's ever done before here with a really strong performance. And just the entire premise is really cool. And for a movie like this, it doesn't really have a ton of plot holes, which is surprising. Number 8 for me is Dom Hemingway. This was the first A that I gave out this year, and it's one that I cannot wait to see again. Really great performances, hilarious stuff. And for me, it ended too quickly, actually. I thought, just as it was getting going, as we were learning more and more about this character that I loved, it ended. So, like Joe, sometimes I want to see more, and that's a good thing. Number 7 for me is Guardians of the Galaxy. One of the first movies this year I actually ended up seeing twice, because the first half of the year was not that stellar. But no, Guardians really turned it around for me on the latest Marvel installments. Other than Captain America, I had not been too impressed the last couple of years, really, with what they were doing. And just to have all these characters from a no-name comic book stand out and become so far the highest-grossing movie of the year really speaks to how great it is. Number 6 for me is Whiplash. I could hope that we're going to see some awards love for at least J.K. Simmons, if not the movie on the whole. And I'm with you, Joe. I can't wait to see it again. It's one that really sticks with you, especially that the song that they keep having Miles Teller play over and over again. Just the instrumentation in this movie, the musicianship, and just the character that J.K. Simmons plays is very powerful. Number 5 for me is Gone Girl. Fantastic movie. Another one I saw twice, and even when you know what happens in this movie, it doesn't make it a worse experience. If anything, it makes it even more...
It's still engaging.
You're looking for clues. Yeah, it's still very engaging. Thank you. You're looking for clues to see if if you can figure it out before anybody else does, even though you already know what happens. And you're absolutely right, Joe. Some great performances here, including Tyler Perry and a great Rosamund Pike performance. Number 4 for me is The Act of Killing. Now, this is one that was on Justin's best of list last year. We have something on this show called the 100 theater rule. So if a movie plays in less than 100 theaters, we sort of can do it for the following year's show, because we don't live in a major city. Sometimes we don't get all the movies right away, and The Act of Killing is one of those examples. I absolutely love this movie. It is such a powerful documentary about a positively madman, and he is being interviewed about his killings and his mass murders and commenting on them, and it's so wild and brilliant in every way and very powerful. Number 3 for me is Calvary. Brendan Gleeson absolutely gives one of the best performances of the year, and this is just such a great mystery / thriller / dark comedy / drama. It's got a lot of powerful things to say about many different issues, not the least, of course, religion. Number 2 for me is Boyhood. On the whole, the story of this movie is decent. It's a good movie story-wise, but the real feat here is how it was made. The 12-year span of being with this entire family, actors playing this family, and writing on the fly, what's going on in the kids' real life. They put it in the script, and just a strong testament to Richard Linklater's dedication to telling real human stories. Justin, let's hear from you.
Number 10 is Fury. David Ayer's redemption film of the year.
Pretty much.
Brad Pitt gives a great performance, as does really the rest of the cast, and gives you this really great claustrophobic atmosphere with some awesome action sequences. I was on the edge of my seat for almost the entire movie. Number 9 is Chef. I gotta say, after all the Iron Man movies, I'm glad we got this foray into this sort of more character-driven sort of ode to food, which I thought was tasteful, smart, and very, very funny. Great chemistry from the entire cast. You never get tired of it. Number 8 is Gone Girl. David Fincher takes a very complicated novel and adapts it to the screen near flawlessly. Great acting. I'm usually very hard on Ben Affleck, but when they're even taking shots at him being wooden in movies, I gotta tip my hat a little bit. It's constantly suspenseful. There's a lot of really great twists. It's a worthy adaptation. My number 7 is The Grand Budapest Hotel. It's no Moonrise Kingdom, but it's a very worthy follow-up from Wes Anderson. Great atmosphere. Ralph Fiennes gives a powerhouse performance, adding in charisma, dark humor, and one completely random gunfight that will never elude my memory. My number 6 is Omar. This was so close to being my first A+ for the year that it continues to frustrate me that it wasn't. Very suspenseful, very well done, very well edited. If it wasn't for those last 10 minutes where it tries to be too much of a thriller, would have been completely perfect. My number 5 is Whiplash. Another one that was so dangerously close to an A+, it's not even funny. J.K. Simmons, if he doesn't take home Best Supporting Actor, I think there's something very rotten in the House of the Academy. Mm-hmm. Great drumming, great editing. So many good things about this movie. I think it gets a little too crazy at times, but easily one of the best movies of the year. My number 4 is Locke. I mean, we've all said it this year. Tom Hardy has completely blown us away. And I think this is really his crowning achievement. He manages to give us a character that's conflicted, trying to stay calm, and doing it all from his car over the course of about 80 minutes. And it never drags, it stays focused, and it gives us a really interesting idea of just the general concept of choice. Number 3 is The Normal Heart. One of the best TV films I've ever seen. Great cast. I'm still shocked that this was not a theatrical release. Great performances. Absolutely heartbreaking at times. Probably the number 1 movie this year that I've cried the most in. I know you guys had some gripes about the first 20 minutes. I thought that was a really nice send up to everything that's going to happen next. Absolutely fantastic movie. My number 2 is Boyhood. I'm sure there's many a Richard Linklater jokes to be made here, but what can I say? The guy knows how to tell a very human story and tell it in a down-to-earth, very focused way that always makes you appreciate the people involved. Dan, I believe you mentioned on the show that they couldn't have contracts for this because the time span was so demanding. Mm-hmm. I mean, that just is a testament to director to cast loyalty, and I think that's a really crowning achievement. Eller Coltrane, even though he's not an actor, does a fantastic job. I hope it isn't the last time we see him in things. Despite not being a before movie, great stuff.
Yeah, for everybody to have the same vision for that long a time and trust each other is a crazy thing that it worked. Justin, it's interesting because before that movie even came out and I first saw the trailer, which made me cry, I said to you, hey, I think we're going to have the same number one movie this year. And it turns out that both of us have it at number 2. So
How's
interesting to see. But now we're going to do our number 1 worst and best of the year. And for me, the worst by far is Left Behind. Joe, you missed a stinker of a movie. This thing is so terrible, hokey, dumb, insulting. It's just...
The list goes on and on.
The list goes on, and I mean, yes, the same could be said for many a Nick Cage movie, but this really takes the cake. Joe had a movie on his top 30 called Joe. Thank God that movie exists, because otherwise, man, I mean, he hasn't done a good movie in years and years, and this is just the turd of them all, in my opinion. It's just a stay away for good. I will note this, because this is sort of an internet thing that's been going around, but Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas, we sort of decided as a collective group that we just didn't know. Yeah, we just didn't need to see it, because from everything I know about it, it's not even really a movie. It's like kind of a movie and kind of a mockumentary and kind of a story about
basically like a film lecture.
Yeah, like a film lecture
about Christmas.
So 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's on many worst stuff lists. You won't hear it here, but I can't imagine it's any good.
Unofficially,
but unofficially. Yeah. But yes, so that's why that's not showing up. And for me, the best of the year is Chef. This was just a movie that blew me away. Everything about this is great. I've seen it now several times, and it just never ceases to get old. The performances are fantastic, especially the dynamic between Favreau and the young man that plays his son. They have such good chemistry together. You really believe everything about this movie, and I think that's the strongest thing about it is its authenticity. Whether it's Favreau's relationship with Dustin Hoffman as his boss, or Sofia Vergara as the ex-wife that he's still friendly with, or even his relationship with Robert Downey Jr. as Sofia Vergara's other ex-husband, in the one scene they shared together. It's just a fantastic movie with just nothing I can complain about. Justin?
My number 1 worst is Legends of Oz, Dorothy's Return. This movie is disgusting. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. This movie did a crowdfund on innocent people who went in on this movie with no other prospects than it's part of the Oz mythos. Honestly, if I didn't know any better and I had seen this somewhere, even I probably would have thrown in a couple of bucks. They deserve so much better. This is hands down a testament to the dark side of things like Kickstarter. The animation's horrible. The songs are terrible. I cannot believe that someone would put this shameless piece of garbage out for public consumption. I am beyond offended by this movie.
With real name actors, too.
With real name actors.
Jane
Big
Lynch,
people.
Jim Belushi.
And Lea Michele, no kidding.
Sure.
Kelsey Grammer, of course.
Yeah, there we go.
Martin Short.
But my number 1, on a much happier note, is Birdman. I think Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu always does a consistent job as director. I loved Babel. I haven't seen 21 Grams. Amores Perros was really good. This is by far the best movie he's ever done. Michael Keaton is back in spades. This story is great. I love the continuous long shot feel of it. It's always engaging, and I think the magical realism marries itself so well to the overall narrative. I think it's not only just one of the best stories of 2014, but I think it's also one of the best commentaries about just current mainstream cinema.
All right, great choice.
Great choice.
All right, Joe, how about for you? We'll wrap it up with your worst and best of 2014.
Well, the worst film of 2014 is still Legends of Hercules for me. I mean, from the first frame, it's terribly shot. Really, it's horribly edited. The acting is barely there. The story, which, based on this great mythos, is barely there. It's really an insult to the character, as you said. And really, probably the most soul-sucking for me. I was so bored. I was not engaged at all. I checked out about 20 minutes in. It was one of the few experiences I could think of that was just utterly painful to sit through it. Just terrible. I mean, the Rock version, not a masterpiece by any stretch, but still significantly better than this for me. So, really, still terrible movie.
And a huge fan of the character, too.
I'm just a huge fan of the character. I'm so disappointed in that one. Really, both of them, but this one just really took the cake. Though, Dorothy was a close one for it. I'll say that. My number one best movie, though, is Calvary. I mean, just great performance from Brendan Gleeson. I think it is really tackling a lot of really tough subject matter. I really love the way it was shot. I love the way it was paced. I love the format of the story. And I just feel like it really leaves you reflecting and probably thinking more than any other film. It's just a truly powerful experience, I think, spiritually even.
Yeah, agreed. All right, well, great lists. I'm excited to hear how they change over the next couple months. As we did last year, we'll be doing a mini-sode come Oscar season where we'll give our Oscar predictions and as well reflect back on our top 20 because obviously a lot of the Oscar-type movies have not been released in mainstream theaters yet, wide release including American Sniper, The Imitation Game, and a lot of those. So join us next year. 2015 is upon us here, and we're going to start off the first week of the year with playing catch up with some movies like Into the Woods, Unbroken, another possible Oscar contender, and some other movies like that. And we'll get back into our regular routine for the first show of the year. Getting plenty of subscribers all the time, so we certainly appreciate everybody that's come aboard, and spread the word. If you know somebody in your life that you think would really enjoy Film Fanatics, tell them about the show, and hopefully they'll enjoy it as you do. You can also check us out on the Facebook group, which is Film Fanatics with an exclamation point, and our Twitter feed at Film Fanatics Pod. Gentlemen, thanks for another great year of Film Fanatics.
And to you, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And audience, we'll see you back here for 2015. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.